9:30 for the 8:13.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes.
You know the best time to go to a dentist?
When?
2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went into Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. I mean, this is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants, things like that.
Well,
so,
yeah. I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down. But in many cases, they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then, the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment? I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected." She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, that Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, 9:30 on Monday the 2nd of September, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Nana Akua.
Ofsted reforms. Now, the government has scrapped one-word Ofsted grading, despite warnings that it will harm pupils and could dumb down rigorous school inspection systems.
And we're asking you a question. Where's Rishi Sunak? He's still the leader of the opposition after all. Parliament resumes today. So are we going to finally hear from him after a radio silence since he badly lost that election?
Now, Prince Harry, apparently there may be a return. The Duke of Sussex is said to be making inquiries about repairing his relationship with his family and the British public.
Notting Hill murders. 2 people now have died as a result of the carnival. What have we heard from the government about that? The worst violence in decades. Is this an example of more two-tier policing?
And are you a smoker? A smoke-free nation? Or that's what the leader of the House of Commons, Lucy Powell, has said is the ambition for Britain. But whose ambition? You don't smoke, do you, Andrew?
No, I used to years and years and years ago, but I absolutely defend the right of people to go to a pub garden and have a fag.
Do you think? I mean, I'd be happy if smoking was outlawed. There's no benefit. Do you think of one benefit for smoking?
Well, I don't want the hospitality industry, the pub trade, to be brought to its knees, and it's already on its knees after COVID, and I think that is the big worry for me.
Well, what do you say? Do you smoke? Do you think it's a good idea? Should it be banned? Should it be outlawed? Get in touch. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Post your comments at gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you and good morning. The top stories. The government's announced one-word Ofsted grades for schools will be scrapped with immediate effect. Previously, Ofsted awarded one of 4 headline grades to schools it inspects, and those are outstanding, good, requires improvement and inadequate. Well, the Department for Education says for inspections this academic year, parents will see 4 grades across the existing subcategories, those being quality of education, behaviour and attitudes, personal development and leadership and management. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has told reporters this morning that the death of head teacher Ruth Perry made the need for Ofsted reform absolutely clear. But Shadow Education Secretary Damien Hines told GB News the move will mean less transparency.
course it's right to look at a broader range of things, but an Ofsted report is not one word. It's usually about 1,400 words and assesses schools on 4 different areas and gives a narrative as well. And there's lots of other indicators about schools as well. You were just talking about absence and attendance. That's another indicator that we publish on schools rightly, as well as attendance and the progress that pupils make. So this move today takes away a piece of information, takes away a piece of transparency, but without adding any. And Ofsted will still have the legal responsibility to identify schools that need to go into special measures, but that will just now in future be somewhat less transparent.
From today, the government will fund 15 hours per week of free childcare for eligible working parents whose children are between 9 months and 2 years old. An education minister has warned it'll be an enormously big job for the government to meet its commitments on free childcare. The 15 hours per week is in addition to an existing offer to parents of 2 years old and 30 hours of free childcare already offered to parents of children aged 3 and 4. However, concerns have continued to be raised about the capacity of the sector to absorb the uptick in childcare places, with an extra 85,000 places needed by next year to complete the rollout. Kemi Badenoch's to call for change in the Conservative Party as she launches her Tory leadership campaign in Westminster today. The Shadow Communities Secretary and contender to replace Rishi Sunak will say her party has to focus on renewal to be ready to return to power. Shadow Leader of the House of Commons, Chris Philp, has revealed that he's backing Ms Badenoch to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. Leadership rival James Cleverly will use his own speech today to say we must think and act like Conservatives again, arguing for a smaller state. And thousands of people in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem filled the streets last night after the killing of 6 hostages in Gaza. Protesters blocked roads while police used water cannons to disperse crowds. IDF soldiers recovered the bodies of the hostages, who Israel says were killed moments before troops reached them. Israel's entire economy are on strike today in a bid to pressure the country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu into accepting a Gaza ceasefire deal after those 6 hostages were shot dead. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer condemned what he described as the horrific and senseless killings. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning, hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and me, Nana Acquia.
Well, the government has announced they're getting on with it, aren't they? They're scrapping 1 or 2 word Ofsted inspection grades for England schools immediately from today. Didn't take long. This is in the back of the suicide last year of the head teacher who was traumatised by the fact her school went from a very high grade to a very low grade. But I just wonder if it's too sweeping. And
It's a bit knee-jerk, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just thought, well, you made the point earlier. I mean, your child will get an GCSE grade.
One letter.
Yeah, and it was an easy, accessible way for a parent to understand how well the school is doing. But if you go onto the Ofsted website, there is the detailed breakdown of how the school is performing. And I don't know why they're taking it away, because these school grades should be about the pupils and the school. I just fear that the government is reacting more to protect the teachers' feelings.
I also think that this is with the unions as well. And they said that they've done a survey and most parents want more than that. It depends what question you ask. If you said to me, would I want more about the school, I would say yes. But that doesn't mean that I don't want one word to define it so that I can determine whether this is a better school than another one. So I'd rather that I have the information, but I want one word, one succinct word to give me a guide. And I get it that it can be painful for those. I think what they need to focus on are the Ofsted inspectors themselves, because I think that a lot of them are inexperienced, and I think some of them may be a bit power hungry. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of, and I think that is more where I would focus.
It's It's just done, and the irony, the school where the head teacher took her own life, she was downgraded heavily because of issues over safeguarding. It wasn't over the academic teaching of history or English or math, it was over safeguarding. So perhaps they could have just reformed the way they get to that conclusion.
And I think this is why the education system is in such a mess, because subsequent governments then change it, because before it was A, B, C, D, then it was A star, then it was 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, but then it was 1, 2, 3. They keep messing it around. And in the end, it just messes with the children's heads and their education, the way things are going. I remember when it was O-levels, which were there for a long time. I had O-levels.
Yeah, me too. We're showing our age.
Yeah, we're old. Then it was GCSEs. And it was, and now it's, I think they've got to stop messing around with.
And also, as part of the package that they've announced today, the government, they're also saying that parents will not be able to take their children out of school for a hot school holiday. The fines that are there already are going to be increased quite considerably. And I still think there are some parents now who simply can't afford to go on holiday during a school holiday period, because we know what happens. The prices go spiralling upwards.
Well, maybe the government should be looking at that. But joining us now, the principal at the LVS Ascot School, Christine Knief. Christine, what do you think of this? They're tampering around with little bits here and there. Now it's the one-word rating, which for me as a parent I find useful. What's your view on it?
Well, ironically, it said in The Guardian today that independent schools and other educational bodies will be following this, but the independent schools started this back in September with a new framework in September 2023. They abolished the one-word judgments in 2 areas for sections like this, which is more qualitative, and I think works really, really well. Now, I know there's an argument for both sides, but I don't think it waters it down. What it will do, it will draw the attention of prospective parents to particular areas. So, for example, you mentioned safeguarding. Another area might be one of the new sections is personal development, for example, and it could be due to lack of funds possibly that a school can't undertake a careers programme adequately or can't provide the co-curricular or extracurricular activities the children need. And that's not their fault, so to speak. It might be their quality of education is brilliant. I think it will draw people to specific sections so that you can get an overall judgment of a school, and it's proven that the independent schools are already doing this.
The independent schools went first. Was it in response to the suicide of the head teacher last year, Christine?
No, the consultation for that, I believe, and I could be wrong, was starting to be talked about way before. But again, I'm not totally sure, or it might have been in parallel, but it wasn't in response to that. I can remember being one of I was Ofsteded when I started out in 1994, and it terrified me. And you talked about the inspectors and the possible abuse of a system. Now, any system, its success is due to the quality and the approach of those inspectors. And when you go in, it is to hold schools to account, but if something's wrong, you need to work with them to put it right.
But is there a sort of power trip with some of them? Because I know with regarding hospitals, that was an issue with the people inspecting hospitals. Some of them had never even stepped foot in the hospital and didn't really understand the full process. Do you find that, or is your view that the inspectors are generally pretty good?
OK, I'll probably be lynched once I leave the room, but there are some power-hungry people out there who abuse the system. I've met you. I've been teaching 30 years. There's no place for it. I've written about it in the book as well. You shouldn't be doing it if that's your approach.
What about the head teacher, by the way, was Ruth Perry, of course, and her family have welcomed this move today. And obviously we're very sorry that she took her own life, but mental health is a very complicated, layered issue, isn't it? And although the inquest found it was a fact, it wasn't the only factor in her death. But Christine, what about the government also saying they're laying down the law now on holidays, so you are not to take your child out of school for a couple of days or maybe a week for a school holiday, and if you do, the fine system that's in place now is going to be increased dramatically. Is that the right approach?
Oh, I know, because I've been on this programme talking about this for quite a few times over the last couple of years. So it's not just this government that's been talking about this. Now, it's proven statistically that if you take your child out of school during term time, you never get those hours back. And it does impact on GCSE grades, without a doubt, full stop. It's not fair on anyone. But as you rightly say, until the holiday prices come down, parents are being penalised, and they would rather pay the fines than, pay literally double the amount once schools break up in the summer.
So how do they resolve that? Because because I would have thought a holiday time with a family, Christine, is a very important part of a family's development together. I mean, I can still remember treasured family holidays, Butlins, caravans, wonderful times. I couldn't bear to think that I wouldn't have those memories and that quality time together. Isn't that an important part of a child's development?
It certainly is, and like you, I was an O-level person, and we went to Butlins every year. I absolutely loved it. But my parents would not have taken me out of school. No. It wasn't even talked about then. You just wouldn't do it. It's not right and proper to. I understand you need quality time, and there are times, like as a head teacher, when I go, yeah, you need to go. And that might be, we might have a military family. Dad's come back from serving abroad. He said, I've got 2 weeks holiday. It's not in the school holidays. What do I do? And I go. You need to be with your family.
I do agree that, taking time off during term time is a bit much. Maybe the government could look at maybe some sort of regulation for the holiday industry, but ultimately it's all about supply and demand. So, Christine, I just want to come back to this Ofsted system. So, in your view, is this the absolute right step forward, and what else would you suggest that maybe Bridget Phillipson could consider?
I think it's a step in the right direction. The only thing is, with 4 categories like that, I would suspect, and we don't know the details, that if you were to fail one of those sections, you might fail the leadership one as well, which you can do in an independent school. And if you're failing 2 out of 4, at what point are you going to be forced to become an academy and to come under a different management system? And I think training inspectors to be empathetic, it's not easy going through an inspection. There are people who will worry and feel anxious about this, and they've got to go in with a more collegiate and empathetic way of assessing schools and ensuring that we move forward so that we've got the best education and the safest education for our children.
Is it, though, slightly hypocritical that the kids will be graded on a number or a letter, one number, one letter, yet the teachers can't take the one word?
It's not about that. You've got to separate those two. But do you know what? Exams will be next. You watch this space.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah. We've got to change it. We've got to change it, the exam system, because, we're more digital now. We're still sat at desks a metre apart like we did in the Victorian age. We're the only sector that hasn't moved forward in the 21st century. It's got to change. I think there'll be more online exams. I think there'll be more assessment over a period of time. And I think they'll be graded differently if GCSEs survive at all.
But are you going to then be talking about online teaching taking the place of the classroom? Surely not.
AI?
No, there's two different things here. I mean, some of the exams will already be online within 2 years, and so that you won't be sat with a piece of paper and a pen. You'll actually be working on a laptop. And if you look at the amount of people that have access arrangements now where they have to use laptops, the majority of my school are probably doing these on laptops already.
How do you know they're not going to cheat if they do it online?
Exactly.
Special laptops, completely wiped down. You can't cheat. You can't Google. You can't do anything on them.
No.
What about mum who's in the bedroom next door? Can't she Google it for the kid, for the child?
No, you'd still have to sit under exam conditions. That wouldn't change.
Are you saying that then, instead of giving people a 1 grade now for an exam, it'll be like a wordy thing, so you won't get a 1, 2, 3, 9 or whatever it is. Instead, it's going to be a few words here and there, and I mean, it's going to be impossible for employers to determine who's good or who's bad. I don't think this has been thought through.
Yeah, but you've got to look at the exam system. Is it fair already? I mean, we're telling a third of the children in this country at the age of 16 that you're failing. You're failing because a third of the country won't pass maths and English. Now, there's something wrong there, don't you think? Hasn't it got to change?
Well, interesting. Christine, you've started quite an interesting debate, I suspect, with our listeners and viewers. That's Christine Cunniff, who's the principal at the LVS Ascot. Thanks so much for joining us. Fascinating.
Yeah.
So, exams next, she thinks. Up next, will today be the day we finally see return of the Leader of the Opposition? Do you remember him? He's called Rishi Sunak. Where are you, Prime Minister? Former Prime Minister. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and is inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme, and that job lasted 6 months, and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children, and last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children? Do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time,
Yeah.
did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training, to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's just gone 50 minutes after 9 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
2 months since the general election, we're asking this question: has anyone seen the Leader of the Opposition, the Scarlet Pimpernel?
Because since the 4th of July, we've seen big issues dominate conversations. Tax rises, winter fuel payments, a suggested smoking ban, the 4-day week and record numbers of small boats.
And the Tory response from Rishi Sunak, he's tweeted a grand total of 13 times in 2 months, several of the tweets about the Olympics and the United States.
Well, joining us now is Chief Operating Officer at Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, Sunil Sharma. Sunil, where is Rishi Sunak? He still is the leader of the Conservative Party. Where is he?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it just seems as if maybe there's loss of enthusiasm, loss of anything. I think it's hard when you know you're definitely leaving the party, you're definitely not going to be the leader, I'm not sure how much determination there is left in him right now. I think it's worrying because there's so much to talk about in terms of what's happened in Labour in the last 50 days or so. I don't think anyone expected to be as bad, if you like, as this. So I think
did.
You did.
I did.
But so soon. I mean,
I thought it would take a lot longer.
It started with riots. I mean, it's not their fault, but still.
But maybe Sunak is leader right up until November the 2nd. There's another 2 months of this. There's a complete vacuum, and that's a problem.
Initially, I actually didn't think when he gave the day, I thought it was a good thing. I thought it was a good opportunity for the party to really think about what happened in the election, an opportunity to get to know the future candidates. I think all of them don't have necessarily massive profiles. So initially, I thought it was good that we have such a long period. I think the bigger thing for the Conservative Party is whoever the next leader is, The main thing I think they have to change is the 1922, the committee to no leadership vote. Because the problem is, I think, so at the moment it's 15%. If 15% of the MPs come out against the leader, then there's a no vote of confidence. Currently, with the Conservative Party, with their limited MPs, that only takes 19, 19. So it doesn't matter who the leader is in some ways, because you're going to be constantly worried about 19 people going against you rather than thinking about the public and what's in the best interest of the public. So, and if you're the general public, you've seen 3 leaders in the space of 3 years, there's a good chance whoever wins in November the 2nd isn't necessarily going to be the leader for the next general election in 3-4 years.
And some people say a factor in why Rishi Sunak called the disastrous early election, as we are talking about Rishi Sunak, was because he'd been tipped off that the number of MPs getting ready to challenge him again was getting very close, so he called the general election.
Well, I think, you know...
I mean, would this already been mad to have had another leadership election?
It's crazy. I mean, what would have made sense? Like, if him right now, he will have seen Boris Johnson go through the same thing, Liz, his whole, premiership was marred by, is there going to be another leadership challenge? Surely it makes sense now to sit there and say, let's hope whoever the next person is, that this doesn't happen to them. For the good of the party, for the good of the country, let me spend the next few months in reforming this 1922 committee, because there's no... whoever wins of the 6, I don't think the public really care that much, and who would blame them?
Do you think the public care about the Tory party at all after the disaster that they left behind?
I don't think many of the members do, because it's really hard to get enthused behind any of the candidates when you don't know in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, if they're still going to be there.
Well, you don't know if they're going to be there in 6 months. If you think about 19 MPs could be the end of... We've got to ask you before we let you go, we're pressed for time. Have you made your mind up?
I've not made my mind up. I think I started with Kemi Badenoch as my probably favourite of the 6, but essentially, Kemi or maybe Robert Jenrick's, I think, done really well.
Watson Nelson.
All right, well,
Thank
that's very
you
interesting.
much. Thank you so much.
And if Rishi Sunak, if you are watching, do come on, please, because we'd love to talk to you as the leader of the opposition while you're still here.
Even Keir Starmer. Still to come, though, is Prince. This is the Prince coming home. Is the Duke of Sussex serious about repairing his relationship with his family?
As long as he doesn't ring his wife.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today, most of us will see some rain, if not also some thunderstorms, but there will be a little bit of brightness around, and for all, it will be feeling fairly warm. So it's a wet start out there, especially across many northern and western parts. Some of this rain will be quite heavy and thundery, given some fairly poor travelling conditions in places. Come the afternoon, there will be some brighter moments, especially across southeast England, East Anglia, and also parts of Northern Ireland. But for most of us, it's going to be a fairly grey picture, but a quite warm picture, fairly humid, especially down towards the south. We will see highs easily reaching the mid-20s. Into this evening, most of the rain will be focused across parts of Scotland. Here, again, there will be some heavy and thundery downpours in places, so a fairly tricky commute here. Further south into Northern Ireland, it's like a little bit drier and brighter moving in here too, and certainly a little bit drier across northern England and into Wales. But again, there still will be a few thundery downpours around. Best of the driest weather come the evening rush hour will be across parts of the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast of England. Into the nighttime period, a lot of the cloud and rain gradually working its way eastward. So some clearing skies across Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. So here, a fresher night than last night, but further east, another fairly humid one. Temperatures in London probably not falling much lower than around 15 or 16 degrees. So a bit of a grey, murky start across many eastern areas. Again, still some outbreaks of rain, but the rain will be nowhere near as heavy as it will be today. Brighter skies further west, but that will be quickly replaced by some further showery outbreaks of rain moving in come the afternoon. So I think by the end of the afternoon, the best of the brightness will be across the central slice of the UK. And for all of us, it will be feeling fresher, with highs in the south reaching around 22 or 23 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Yorkshire, the A1079 York Road's blocked westbound by an accident off the A614 at the Shipton Thorpe roundabout to the northwest of Market Wheaton, causing delays. In South Yorkshire, the A633 remains closed along Rotherham Road at Monk Bretton in Barnsley for an investigation. On the M42 in Worcestershire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed northbound where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 3 and 3A from Redditch to the M40, causing delays. In Eastport Talbot, the A4109 is closed each way between Seven Sisters and Crynant after an accident. Train services are suspended between Corriton and Cardiff Queen Street because of a signalling problem. In London on the North Circular, the inside lane's closed westbound after an accident just before the Crooked Billet interchange at Walthamstow with queues from the bottom of the M11. And on the M25 in Essex, there are 2 lanes closed anti-clockwise after an accident between junctions 29 and 28 from the A127 to the A12, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
How would you land? Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of September, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and me, Nana Akweer.
Ofsted reforms. The government has scrapped one-word Ofsted gradings despite warnings this will harm pupils and could dumb down rigorous school inspection systems.
Now, where is Rishi Sunak? I mean, Parliament resumes today, so will we finally see or hear from the leader of the opposition after radio silence since losing the general election?
Prince Harry's return. The Duke of Sussex is reportedly making inquiries about trying to repair his relationship with his family and the British public so he can start coming back to Britain.
You think he's trying to sell a few more books?
Not with his wife.
Notting Hill. Now, of course, we've had the murders at Carnival. 2 people were stabbed to death. What have we heard from the government? It's the worst violence in decades. Is this more two-tier policing?
And smoke-free nation. Well, that's what the Leader of the House of Commons, Lucy Powell, says is the ambition for Britain. Is it, or is it her ambition, or the government's ambition?
What do you think, Carnival? Do you think they should move Notting Hill Carnival?
I think probably they should.
Yeah.
I was speaking to some people only the other day. I had no idea about the incredible impact it has on people who live there.
Yeah.
This particular person pays to have her house boarded up and she goes away with the family.
Wow.
Every year.
Terrible.
Hundreds of pounds she pays. This is all the local shops closed down because gangs just move in and help themselves. So I think it needs to be in an area which is less residential. Hyde Park comes to mind.
Well, I wrote about that last year and everyone said, you don't believe that, and I had so much flack for it.
Of course you did. Well, bravely for saying it. I think it's right. But also, the point we're having a discussion about this, the government were all over the disturbances after this Southport killings.
Yeah.
Not a word do they say about Notting Hill. Is it because it's a festival that celebrates the Calypso, the black community?
Well, I mean, I think it's a very good question. I'd say the answer to that, I hate to say it, but I think it's yes.
Well.
But what do you think? Should Carnival be moved? Send us your thoughts, post your comments. gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your news. Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much. The top stories this hour. The government has announced one-word Ofsted grades for schools will be scrapped with immediate effect. Previously, Ofsted awarded 1 of 4 headline grades to schools it inspects, and those are outstanding, good, requires improvement and inadequate. The Department for Education says for inspections this academic year, parents will see 4 grades across the existing subcategories, those being quality of education, behaviour and attitudes, personal development and leadership and management. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has told reporters this morning that the death of head teacher Ruth Perry made the need for Ofsted reform absolutely clear. But Shadow Education Secretary Damien Hines told GB News the move will mean less transparency.
Of course it's right to look at a broader range of things, but an Ofsted report is not one word. It's usually about 1,400 words and assesses schools on 4 different areas and gives a narrative as well. And there's lots of other indicators about schools as well. You were just talking about absence and attendance. That's another indicator that we publish on schools rightly, as well as attendance and the progress that pupils make. So this move today takes away a piece of information, takes away a piece of transparency, but without adding any. And Ofsted will still have the legal responsibility to identify schools that need to go into special measures, but that will just now in future be somewhat less transparent.
In other news from today, the government will fund 15 hours per week of free childcare for eligible working parents whose children are between 9 months and 2 years old. But an education minister has warned it'll be an enormously big job for the government to meet its commitments on free childcare. The 15 hours per week is in addition to an existing offer to parents of 2-year-olds and 30 hours of free childcare already offered to parents of children aged 3 and 4. However, concerns have continued to be raised about the capacity of the sector to absorb the uptick in childcare places, with an extra 85,000 places needed by next year to complete the rollout. Kemi Badenoch's to call for change in the Conservative Party as she launches her Tory leadership campaign in Westminster today. The Shadow Communities Secretary and contender to replace Rishi Sunak will say her party has to focus on renewal to be ready to return to power. Shadow Leader of the House of Commons Chris Philp has revealed he is backing Ms Badenoch to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. MPs return to Westminster today after the summer break, with the candidates seeking support ahead of the first round of voting in the Tory leadership race on Wednesday. Well, in a major speech in London today, leadership contender James Cleverly is expected to say that Conservative answers are needed to solve the most challenging problems facing our country. Cleverly will highlight the need for us to remake the argument for capitalism to boost economic growth and give younger people a stake in society. He'll also argue we should be a family-first society and stop looking to the state as our first port of call when a problem arises. Elsewhere, thousands of people in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem filled the streets last night after the killing of 6 hostages in Gaza. Protesters blocked roads while police used water cannons to disperse crowds. IDF soldiers recovered the bodies of the hostages, who Israel says were killed moments before troops reached them. Israel's entire economy are now on strike today in a bid to pressure the country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu into accepting a Gaza ceasefire deal after those 6 hostages were shot dead. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer condemned what he described as the horrific and senseless killings. And back home, the Department for Work and Pensions is launching a week of action to encourage the elderly to check their eligibility for pension credit worth up to £3,900 a year. The campaign will involve charities and local authorities, urging the families, friends and neighbours of elderly people to ask them to look into whether they could benefit. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is seeking to soften the blow from her cut on the winter fuel allowance, with a drive to encourage more pensioners to take up benefits they may not have known that they're entitled to. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News with Andrew Pearce, and it's Nana Aquia today. Delighted.
Yes, lovely to work with you. But let's get stuck in. Prince Harry, he's consulted former aides about a possible partial return to the UK as he seeks to repair his public image, that is according to the Daily Mail.
Who wants him? I'm sorry. This is, of course, he's got his book Spare.
Yeah,
The paperback comes out later this year. Now, he's not updating it, but he'll want to promote it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He says he's not doing any interviews, but we're talking about him now, we're talking about Spare.
Yeah.
And is he going to come back with his wife? What about the children? Because apparently it's not safe for his wife and children in this country, according to Harry, even though he took his wife to Colombia, which is much less safe than Britain, in my view.
It's absurd. And anyway, he was able to attend his uncle's funeral quite easily.
He did.
Nobody knew he was coming. He said
That's
he wasn't, and then he did. And he was perfectly safe.
And he would have had the same security as every other member of the royal family who attended that event.
Yeah.
But, of course, he didn't speak to his brother at the funeral.
No, he wouldn't, would he?
So if he's trying to fix it, honestly, a funeral is where you should put all differences aside because it's not about you. It's about respect to the person, the family of the person who's gone, which was his uncle. It was his... Diana's sister's husband had died. So, yet they didn't speak. They didn't speak in the church, they didn't speak when they left the church. Incredible, isn't it?
It's awful because that moment is when you realise that we are all mortal. And at that point, all other things should transcend that, but not...
Well, this move is being branded as Operation Bring Harry In From the Cold, because apparently he's a bit fed up with his life in Montecito. Does that mean with his wife?
I don't know.
Oh, no. Apparently he's dissatisfied with advice from his American-based image expert.
Well, they've had about 10 of them, haven't they? They're on to number 11. Joining us now, royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela, lovely to see you this morning. Good morning.
Yeah, very
Angela,
nice to see you both.
Operation Bring Harry In From the Cold. Firstly, is there any truth to this? Because we do hear lots of things and then some of them may not be true. It's in the Daily Mail, very reputable newspaper. But what are your sources? Where have you heard this?
Well, I have several things. It's exactly what it is. It's a nonsense because it's never going to be cosy. A man of his age who attacked his father and his brother and his sister-in-law so horrendously isn't suddenly going to change how he is and be Mr. Sweetie. He's just not. He said that they're trapped. And does he want to be trapped? Of course not. I think the reason he's doing is, one, he's got more chance of 24/7 protection. He's taking the government to court for the third time, and he's desperately after that. He's a very, very determined man now. He was much more free and easy when I knew him and spent time with him, but now he's very determined. He won't give away. So that's one. Number two, he'll want a property, and that will mean he's back on the Councillor of State. So if the king is not well or needs help, and there's forms to be filled out and documents to be looked at, he could be doing one of that. That means he's back in the line. Can't have that. He's also got, I'm sure he'll use what he hears and what he sees to earn money for other things that he's doing. If he really cared, with his with his book coming out in paperback, I think he could say to the publishers, I want all these awful things that I've said out. The whole point of having a paperback is that you can correct any mistakes. So he should actually ask for the whole lot to be taken out, all the insults, all the dangers that he killed X number of people when he was fighting for the country. There's plenty of things he could do. He's not going to do anything. This is all a game. This is all nonsense. And I think that we've got to be very, very careful. And I hope that the royal family are very, very careful too. The king loves him. Of course he does. It's his son. But he will drive him absolute crazy. He's got to be very careful that he doesn't get too much stress. But Harry's going to want and want and want. What you said about Meghan, she's not going to come, except if she could take some of the jobs that Catherine has. She's very jealous of her. So she would come over if she had a big house, lots of money. She once complained that she thought it was shocking that they weren't paid for each thing that they did. When she was in Australia, she was saying, you know, aren't they paying us for this? This is terrible. And I think that that would be a disaster as well. As for the children, they don't seem to be important about schooling or whether it be half and half. But what Harry can't do, the late Queen was absolutely determined about, is being half in and half out. And I think they've just got to stop him in any possible way. It really upsets me and makes me very nervous that he would put on a pretense that he's a victim and want to come back. And he's not a victim. He's become very, very unpleasant about what he does.
I think that the nub is there, what you said, Angela, about half in and half out, which is to quote the late Queen, because, of course, if he did come back and was here part of the year, he can't then be back in America earning money from commercial ventures. He's either got to be on the civil list like the other royals and become a full-time working royal or not, and he's clearly not willing to do that. So, yet again, it seems he wants the best of both worlds here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what he's like now, you see. He wants the best of it, and he can see there's a chance to get it because Prince William is very, very busy, lots on his mind and things he has to do. His wife's not well, so there's a sort of... they could necessarily take advantage of that. The king is obviously doing his very best, but he gets tired, and they can take advantage of that too. And I think that it's just got to say, look, Harry, you've lost the plot, and we're not having people telling us what to do. If Harry was really wanted to do it, he's nearly 40. You say to your father, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. But he won't do that. He'll want apologies, and he'll want money, and he'll want super security.
But look, Harry might argue that actually he wants to rebuild bridges with his parents, and actually you never know. But he might be being genuine. Let's just imagine that he might be. Meghan might also say that actually she was treated unfairly by the press and not equal in the same way as Catherine. That's what they might argue. I don't believe a word of it, actually, if I'm totally honest with you. But I must present the other side of the argument, just because there may be a shred of truth in that he wants to rebuild bridges. Or do you think they're just basically running out of money?
Well, their money would be very useful. Yes, he'll ask his father for money because his father's got a load of money, and he'll try to get money out of him. But I understand, Nana, that you want to give both sides. But actually, if you really analyse how they've been, you can't just suddenly change and be a different person. You just can't. It's not possible. He can go from being lovely. He was lovely when I saw him. He was terrific. You can go downhill because if somebody is bringing out the worst in you, that's what happens to you. But there's no way he's going to come back and be wonderful. There's too much.
I didn't go that far.
Yeah.
I feel it very strongly.
Yeah, and I was thinking, though, if the mere idea that he's thinking this could be a possibility, it would be a terrible repudiation of Project Meghan, which was to extricate her husband from Britain, from the royal family, and get him full-time in America. It would appear that Project Meghan has failed because we can't see where the money's coming from. Now, what the couple are going to do, she's launched a pot of jam or something, hasn't she?
American Riviera
Orchard, which doesn't appear to have done much either. So has Project Meghan unravelled?
I think it has, actually. The thing is, Meghan doesn't know why people don't like her, don't want to do things to her. She's not sensitive about that, and she doesn't understand that people don't want to be told what to do when they're skilled in that area. This goes for everyone, a chef, a CEO, for her cooking deal. And they all retired. The chef went because she would be watching over him and looking at every single thing and telling him what she does. Well, you can't have a top chef like that. It's very good to get a top chef, but they don't want that. The same as there's another person who's resigned today. So it just goes on because they can't stand it. I think they're used to a certain amount of telling what they want. But actually, it's just that Meghan does think. Well, she always calls herself a global something or other. You see, she's not. That's one of the huge reasons why she's not interested in the UK. But I think she needs help to explain why people don't like her.
Well, she's just lost another head of PR. As you said, they've lost another staff man. Remember, that person's gone. They were with them for a short time. This does sort of look quite bad.
Pattern of behaviour.
Because everybody seems to leave them after spending a very short period of time with them.
Very short. Now, if you look at the real monarchy, they're there for 20, 30 years. And that because they're treated like one of the family. When I was doing his biography, they all said they were treated like family. They had to work hard. They don't get much money, but they were treated like family. And Meghan doesn't do anything like that. And they won't be shouted at and screamed at. Why should they? Why should anybody?
Angela, always lovely to talk to you. That's Angela Levin, biographer of Prince Harry. Up next, we're going to be talking to the former Labour advisor, Matthew Larser, and the author... Who else are we talking to? And broadcaster, Emma Wolfe.
Yes.
With Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, look, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. Everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and it could become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, I kind of thought, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 21 minutes after 10 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Nana Claire.
Former Labour advisor Matthew Larser is here, author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe's in the studio. Do you should go back to advising the Labour Party? They're not doing very well, are they?
Oh, well, I'm sure they do even better with my advice, but the call hasn't come yet. But, I'd miss my Monday mornings with you, Andrew, and with Nana regularly.
Idea to insult people who thought Mrs Thatcher was rather good news. Britain's most historic Prime Minister of the 20th century, longest-serving, first woman.
What strange judgment.
judgment.
Portrait commissioned by Gordon Brown.
Can we pause for a moment to say happy birthday to our glorious leader?
Keir Starmer, it's his birthday today.
Oh, is it?
62
That's why I haven't been called, because I haven't put the birthday card in the post.
Right. Exactly.
So I think they need to be careful about picking silly fights. I mean, the Thatcher one is really odd, because, as you say, Gordon Brown famously invited Mrs T for a cup of tea.
Yep.
And then the portrait, I think, came out of that. Yeah, that was £100,000 and then, of course, Keir, just a few months ago, actually, I think it was actually this year, sort of said that he praising Thatcher, said that there were things to learn from her, that she was a strong Prime Minister. She got things done. And then, on the other hand, so you took a political hit. A lot of people in the Labour Party on the left and the sort of liberal commentators all piled in on him, the Guardianistas, and now he's going the other way. So my view is, if you're going to pick a political battle, don't fight both sides at once. Make up your mind. So I think they need to be careful about these silly things that become bigger issues.
Apparently, he doesn't even use that room anyway. It wouldn't be somewhere where he would go. She's a woman, so the optics are really bad there as well, because he couldn't say what a woman was, whether she had a penis or not. So,
I mean, the other thing, apparently he said that he thought the eyes followed him around the room. I think it was more a question of art than Maggie. In which case, I'm sure there were lots of other portraits of Maggie available.
It's a bit thin-skinned there. That's why I my little monologue.
I think it just shows really bad judgment and in terms of taking the temperature of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what your political leanings, there's a lot of love and respect, I think, for Margaret Thatcher.
Exactly.
As you say, as a woman, as a great Prime Minister, for many people, she kind of encapsulates number 10, doesn't she?
Yeah. Well, she was the longest-serving Prime Minister in the 20th century. That's even against all the men.
You don't mess with Churchill, you don't mess with Thatcher.
And it's make your political mind up. Don't be praising her 1 minute and taking a picture down the next. Mixed messages, never good.
We know we've got overcrowding problem in prisons, and we know that a lot of prisoners who are going to be set free early, which I have grave reservations about. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is this bonkers scheme, which I think it's bonkers, that we would possibly move older prisoners, mostly male inmates, we're talking over 50 and upwards, to care homes to ease prison overcrowding. And this actually gets worse and worse the more you look. First of all, I thought, well, this is ludicrous. Yeah. This is absolutely ridiculous. The prison population over 50, obviously, because people aren't rehabilitated in this country, they're just sort of left to languish, is going to treble from around 5,000 in 2003 to around 14,800. But when you look at what these men are in prison for, over 50s, around half of them are in prison for sexual offences. When you look at the over 70s, male prisoners, around 80% are in prison for historic sexual offences. So this is quite a significant, distinct group of men. Yeah. It's also to do with the fact that we've got aging, we've got longevity. People are living a lot longer. It's also to do with the overcrowding and all of that, and this trend for ever longer sentences. But I think we're really, if this were to come to pass, Matthew, I don't know what you think about who is advising the idea of this.
So it's an idea from the Prison Reform Trust, the campaign group. Right. But what makes it sort of particularly piquant is that until he was appointed as a minister, James Timpson, who's now the Prisons Minister, was the head of the Prison Reform Trust until he was made a Labour peer. And so therefore, the thinking is that will he import this idea that his old colleagues at the Prison Reform Trust are putting forward? I mean, I would say what they're not saying in everyday care homes. What they're saying is that there should be specific prison care homes, because one of the issues at the moment is obviously you have to give prisoners the health care that they need. There are quite a few with dementia, etc. So it actually doesn't really work to look after them in the kind of Victorian prison estate. So what you would do is you would build secure prison care homes which would effectively be prison, but obviously the regime would be slightly. If somebody's got a dementia, the regime would be different to the sort of what we think of as the kind of traditional prison regime. But even that's obviously controversial.
Will they have patients so people who are in that care home in the same space, sort of thing?
Everything would all be prisoners. It would just be prisoners.
The entire home would just be prisoners.
Yes, I think that's what I think that. I mean, that's the only way it could even be mildly acceptable. If everybody was a prisoner in it. And as Emma says, because the numbers are increasing so much, presumably there would be more people in there to justify having such a system as our prisoners, as the age of the prison population got older.
Build a prison.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Why not?
I think effectively it's a prison with more caring facilities. Because if you've got people with Alzheimer's, if you've got people with serious medical conditions in their 70s.
Caring for a 70-year-old is very different to caring for a 20-year-old lad who's in there for GBH or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, this all comes down, and we've talked about it before, is the failure of the prison system.
Absolutely.
Who was that guy yesterday? Andy Crofts, I can't remember his name. Andy Cook. the police watchdog, saying the entire criminal justice system is dysfunctional, it's not working, not just prisons overcrowding, but the fact that you put people in for, what, 5 years, and then you expect them to come out and be rehabilitated. No, you have to put the work in. You have to reform them. I know that's terribly woke and unlike me to say, but you can't just shove people in there with a bunch of other criminals, expect them to sort of reform.
And then, of course, one issue with very old prisoners is if you've got a long sentence, they're not going to come out, you're not going to rehabilitate, and they are effectively going to die in prison. You're going to see an increasing number of people dying in prison.
Well, it depends what they've done. I don't know whether I care.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying, you know, often it's good they've got a long sentence,
well, no,
but that means you need to look after them if they've got Alzheimer's.
They die in prison. That was the bit I thought, well, if they've done something really horrific.
Yep,
Let's talk about Germany, though, the far right. Now, everyone calls it the far right. I'm always dubious of using that term over when people are actually complaining about things that they should have a voice for in terms of immigration. But it's Germany's anti-immigration alternative for Germany, so AfD. They're celebrating a historic success with a big victory for the far right, and I say far right because, again, there's a lot of people that voted who are not like Hitler.
Yeah, absolutely. Although they're controversial. There's 2 state elections in Germany, and the state elections are hugely important. They run a huge percentage of public services in Germany. So these are both in the old East Germany before the wall came down. And in Thuringia, their leader Björn Höcke has actually been prosecuted twice for using slogans that were from, which is a crime in Germany from the Nazi era, although he denies that he knew. The AfD sort of slightly varies in how right it is in each of these different states, but basically in Thuringia and in neighbouring Saxony, they've had really good performances, topping the poll in Thuringia, coming second to the Christian Democrats, the party of Angela Merkel as was. And so the big question now is, will they form governments? Now, probably not, but one of the interesting things that happened, as well as the rise of this party, there's also a rise of another party, which is a woman who was in the Left Party, which is the old Communist Party. She left, she started her own list, she's pro-Russia, she's anti-Europe, she's anti-immigration, but she's left on economics, and she is going to be the kingmaker in both states.
You see what happens?
Immigration again, amazing.
You see what happens? Exactly as Nana said. It's not that people have suddenly become nasty, sort of Nazi-leaning types. Yeah. It's that when you ignore people's valid concerns about economic inequality, about immigration specifically, you push them to extremes. You push them to the state where you're saying, oh, far right. Well, actually, people are being ignored, and it's not just in Germany, is it?
No.
It's across the States, it's across Europe.
Well, and the irony is that
But let's just brand them far right, and that's fine.
But the irony is Keir Starmer's talking about closer links with Europe and everything else like that.
He is.
Will he want those closer ties if Europe turns out to be more right-wing?
He's been
stealthily talking about youth mobility.
Scholz, the German Chancellor, 5 meetings since the general election. He's only 2 months ago. This bloke Scholz is out.
Well, I mean, on this showing, he's definitely out. I mean, they were in single figures, all the coalition parties in both states. I mean, I think the issue is that it's likely to push the mainstream parties. The Christian Democrats are in opposition, plus the Greens, Liberals and Scholz's Socialists, who are in power, to the right. And already we saw last week that the first Afghan and Syrian refugees were sent home from Germany, which, of course, we don't do here.
And they're no longer going to be giving them checks and handouts. They're going to be giving out, what was it, beds, bath and soap?
Bread and water.
Which I think is
slightly unfortunate phrase from the German.
Back to biblical times.
Yes. But, so, I mean, the question here will be, maybe what Keir wants to do is get a kind of pan-European deal to send people back to Afghanistan and Syria, because that's the only way you're going to get the numbers down.
Well, we'll carry on with that. We'll see you in an hour. Matthew Lanza and Emma Wolf, thank you very much.
Still to come, one week on from Notting Hill Carnival, and what's been done after 2 people now have been confirmed to have died of their injuries.
And will today be the day we finally see and hear from the leader of the opposition? Where's Rishi? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much and good morning. The top stories. The government's announced one-word Ofsted grades for schools will be scrapped with immediate effect. Previously, Ofsted awarded one of 4 headline grades to schools it inspects, and those are outstanding, good, requires improvement and inadequate. The Department for Education says for inspections this academic year, parents will see 4 grades across the existing subcategories, those being quality of education, behaviour and attitudes, personal development and leadership and management. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has told reporters this morning that the death of head teacher Ruth Perry made the need for Ofsted reform absolutely clear. But Shadow Education Secretary Damien Hines told GB News the move will mean less transparency.
Of course it's right to look at a broader range of things, but an Ofsted report is not one word. It's usually about 1,400 words and assesses schools on 4 different areas and gives a narrative as well. And there's lots of other indicators about schools as well. You were just talking about absence and attendance. That's another indicator that we publish on schools rightly, as well as attendance and the progress that pupils make. So this move today takes away a piece of information, takes away a piece of transparency, but without adding any. And Ofsted will still have the legal responsibility to identify schools that need to go into special measures, but that will just now in future be somewhat less transparent.
In other news from today, the government will fund 15 hours per week of free childcare for eligible working parents whose children are between 9 months and 2 years old. An education minister has warned, though, that it'll be an enormously big job for the government to meet its commitments on free childcare. The 15 hours per week is in addition to an existing offer to parents of 2-year-olds and 30 hours of free childcare already offered to parents of children aged 3 and 4. However, concerns have continued to be raised about the capacity of the sector to absorb the uptick in childcare places, with an extra 85,000 places needed by next year to complete the rollout. Kemi Badenoch's to call for change in the Conservative Party as she launches her Tory leadership campaign in Westminster any moment now. The Shadow Communities Secretary and contender to replace Rishi Sunak will say her party has to focus on renewal to be ready to return to power. Shadow Leader of the House of Commons Chris Philp has revealed that he's backing Ms Badenoch to be the next leader of the Tory party. And leadership rival James Cleverly will use his own speech today to say we must think and act like Conservatives again, arguing for a smaller state. And the government has promised to look into dynamic ticket pricing after the cost of tickets for the Oasis reunion tour more than doubled while on sale. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy described the selling of inflated Oasis tickets as depressing. As she said, surge pricing would be included in a government review of the secondary gig sales market. On Saturday, fans of the world-famous band sat in virtual queues for hours, hoping to get their hands on tickets to one of the shows next year. However, when they finally got through, many were met with ticket prices far higher than face value. Some expressed their anger on social media as tickets worth £148 were being sold for £355 on Ticketmaster within hours of release. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, up next is the government's reaction to the Notting Hill murders, more proof of a two-tier society. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today, most of us will see some rain, if not also some thunderstorms, but there will be a little bit of brightness around, and for all, it will be feeling fairly warm. So it's a wet start out there, especially across many northern and western parts. Some of this rain will be quite heavy and thundery, giving some fairly poor travelling conditions in places. Come the afternoon, there will be some brighter moments, especially across southeast England, East Anglia, and also parts of Northern Ireland. But for most of us, it's going to be a fairly grey picture, but quite warm picture, fairly humid, especially down towards the south. We will see highs easily reaching the mid-20s. Into this evening, most of the rain will be focused across parts of Scotland. Here, again, there will be some heavy and thundery downpours in places, so a fairly tricky commute here. Further south into Northern Ireland, it's like a little bit drier and brighter moving in here too, and certainly a little bit drier across northern England and into Wales. But again, there still will be a few thundery downpours around. Best of the driest weather come the evening rush hour will be across parts of the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast of England. Into the nighttime period, a lot of the cloud and rain gradually working its way eastward. So some clearing skies across Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. So here, a fresher night than last night, but further east, another fairly humid one. Temperatures in London probably not falling much lower than around 15 or 16 degrees. So a bit of a grey, murky start across many eastern areas. Again, still some outbreaks of rain, but the rain will be nowhere near as heavy as it will be today. Brighter skies further west, but that will be quickly replaced by some further showery outbreaks of rain moving in come the afternoon. So I think by the end of the afternoon, best of the brightness will be across the central slice of the UK. And for all of us, it will be feeling fresher with highs in the south reaching around 22 or 23 degrees.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Yorkshire, the A633 remains closed each way along Rotherham Road at Monkbretton in Barnsley for an investigation. Burton Road is also closed there. In Nottinghamshire, the A6011 is blocked northbound by an accident towards the A612 Manvers Street at Sneinton in Nottingham after an accident. In Heathport Talbot, the A4109 is closed each way between Seven Sisters and Crynant after an accident. Train services are suspended between Cardiff Queen Street and Corriton because of a signalling problem. On the M5 near Bristol, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed southbound where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 17 and 18 from the Cribs Causeway to the M49 causing queues. In Wiltshire, the A429 is partly blocked by an accident near junction 17 of the M4 near Chippenham causing queues. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking half an hour in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
(10:38). This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. It's been 1 week since Notting Hill Carnival made the headlines, once again for the wrong reasons.
Now the 32-year-old mother, Chef Maximum, and also Chef Musi Imnetu were attacked in separate incidents and died of their injuries on the same day.
Haven't heard anything from the government about that, have we? Is this more examples of two-tier policing?
Well, joining us now, former Detective Superintendent in the Metropolitan Police, Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, thank you very much for joining us. Really tragic, sad news. But we hear this every year. People are always stabbed every year. Last year, I wrote a piece in the Daily Mail. There were people running with machetes. We have video of them doing this. Is it now time to just move this thing to somewhere where it can actually be effectively policed?
Well, I don't think it's a question of moving it to somewhere else, because every year you will get a small minority of those criminals that want to go to Notting Hill Carnival to sort out their beef, their retribution or their feuds, and they see it as a good location because you can hide within plain sight effectively. But things do need to change in terms of how it's policed. In my experience as a former police officer and having worked across Hackney and dealing with the worked for Notting Hill Carnival, a huge amount of work goes in by policing and organisers. Police will also target those individuals that they are aware are involved in gangs or some form of criminality that are likely to attend. They will give them letters, they will approach them, they'll do dawn raids just before Carnival time to arrest those people, to stop them from going to Carnival. So a lot does go into it, but there needs to be more intelligence. This was such a tragic, horrific, both incidents of two individuals. That young woman was trying to prevent these vile individuals from fighting, and as a result, she lost her life. She was there with a 3-year-old, and then the other gentleman, Mr. That's it. Yes, apologies.
That's all right.
Was there as he'd come from Dubai, a very well-known, hard-working chef, found with head injuries. But yeah, look, this does happen every year. You will get incident. And the other issue is that every year Carnival gets bigger. It's the second largest carnival in the world, the first, I believe, across Europe. So second to the Rio carnivals. Huge economy intake, something like 300 million made, people travelling from all across the world. I don't think it should be stopped at all. But I do think they've got...
But not stop, but move, because literally everything you said there sounds like it should be moved. I mean, you said people can hide in plain sight. Absolutely, because it's on the streets. And also it gets bigger every year, so it's even more uncontrollable. Why is there so much objection to it moving somewhere in an enclosed environment where you could check if people are coming in with knives?
Yeah, I don't think you of course you'll be able to do a certain amount of checking, and potentially you could probably do that, but with these long streets, with these side streets, with the footfall that comes through, it's very difficult. The point I'm making to you is that every year you will get those very small minority, no matter where it's held, that will be hell-bent intent on going to cause trouble because they have their own issues to deal with. They've got, retribution, feuds, all that sort of stuff. And I'm not sure that containing it in somewhere like Hyde Park, for example, will actually be able to manage it because of the size of the carnival, which, as we say, is getting bigger every year. But I do think that there needs to be more done in terms of intelligence. There may be potential knife arches in various locations, and you've got to build trust and confidence amongst certain sections of the community in order to get that intel. Remember, these individuals that go, their friends, potentially their family, other people know that they're going there for that reason, and that's the kind of information that needs to be shared with police.
Chairman, do you think is there any? Some people suspect that the police and government of all persuasion are pussyfoot around this because over 300 arrests, 2 people stabbed to death. When you consider the hue and the cry there was over the disturbances after Southport, but we don't get this when it's Notting Hill, and it seems to happen every year. Is it because it's a celebration of Caribbean culture, so the politically correct say we can't criticise?
No, I don't think so. And I think when you compare that to the riots, they're two completely different. Caribbean, the Notting Hill Carnival is a vibrant event and it's done every year. Those riots are something completely different. But if you compare that and you're talking about pussyfooting around things like this, what about the Leeds Festival? What about Reading Festival? Within the last few years, 2 young people died because of drugs. Young girls are sexually abused and assaulted. The prosecution rate is absolutely abysmal. Why isn't there a cry out for those kind of festivals also to be stopped? All of them do definitely need to be looked at. Notting Hill Carnival is an issue in terms of the violence. This year did seem, in my personal experience, particularly bad. Tragic loss of life.
It's just getting worse. It's getting worse. I personally think there is an element to the fact that it is a celebration of Caribbean culture, and I think that does have some play in it. I think a lot of people are scared to be seen as racist, and I would say that there is an element of that. But I appreciate your comments. That's a former detective superintendent from the Metropolitan Police, Shabnan Chowdhury.
Up next, we were asking, because we think he might come on if we keep asking, where is Rishi Sunak? He is, of course, still the leader of the opposition. Plus, we are asking that ahead of Kemi Badenoch. She was in the last cabinet. She's launching her Tory leadership bid today. So is James Cleverly, who was Home Secretary and Foreign Secretary. I bet you can't wait.
No, I can't wait. She'll be up very shortly. Stay tuned. This is Britain's Newsroom live across the UK and GB News.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's have a look at this story in the Telegraph, Charlie. And this is about Anglican Church, the Church of England, dropping the word church in favour of something a bit more modern sounding. Words such as community. Why are we afraid of the word church?
Well, that's my question. I mean, you've got to assume that they think it solves some kind of problem. But I think, there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about their particular religious institution, whatever they all have different names, don't they? And if you rename one, do you have to rename all of them? Can we no longer use an individual name for different religions, community buildings?
Are you religious?
I'm spiritual.
You sound like him. Yeah.
No, certainly.
Oh, don't get Ellie started on me.
Do I believe in a God? Yes. Do I believe in any of the particular gods that are offered to us? Still undecided.
I'm like you. I said exactly that.
You two are the same. You two are exactly
What about you, Anna? Are you particularly religious?
Well, I'm not a proper religious. I won't name myself as a religious, but I really do respect religions. And we have bigger problems to think about.
Is it a sign of where we're at in this secular society?
Yes.
We're moving more and more towards that. The Anglican Church feels that the only way to be relevant is to take away any reference to church going, to being religious.
I think if the substance of what you're offering is good, it doesn't matter what it's called. You know, so if people are going to find solace and peace in a place that makes them feel better, they're not going to care too much about what it's called. So I think relabeling it, rebranding it, I don't know, maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, but it's going to certainly upset a lot of people, I should think.
And people whose religion is important to them and kind of central to their lives, you can imagine.
Absolutely.
There's a reason Justin Welby is nicknamed by some quarters the Archbishop of Woke. Maybe this adds fuel to the fire, who knows?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good morning, 48 minutes after 10 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So shortly we're heading live to Kemi Badenoch's leadership campaign launch to take over from Sir Keir Starmer. But to bring us up to speed, GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster.
Yes, Catherine, so Kemi Badenoch, what is she expected to say? What do we think she might be included in her speech?
Yes, good morning. Well, Kemi Badenoch doesn't mince her words, does she? She put on X a video of David Tennant, Doctor Who previously, saying that wished she would shut up. And she said that no, she won't be shutting up, and she's not afraid of taking on the difficult questions. So we will hear from her around about 11 o'clock. She's one of the absolute favourites to take over from Rishi Sunak. If she gets to the final two and it gets decided by the members, I think it's quite likely that she will win. But that is not assured because her style, although she's very popular with many, Laura Trott and Chris Philp, both former cabinet ministers, have come out in support of her. Claire Coutinho, the shadow energy minister, may well shortly too. But she isn't to everybody's taste as far as MPs go. She is very combative. She says what she thinks. Lots of people think that's fabulous and that's just what's needed, but not everybody. Certainly she's going to go after Labour. We expect that she will brand them clueless, irresponsible and dishonest, but she's going to talk a lot about renewal. She's going to say they need to win back trust, and she says we can't just sit around pointing out how terrible Labour is, fun as that is.
All right, that's Catherine Forster, political correspondent, who will be there at the launch of the Badenoch campaign launch, as we will have the cameras there too. Now, in the 2 months since the general election, has anyone seen Rishi Sunak?
Yes, because since the 4th of July, we've seen big issues dominate the conversations. We've had tax rises, winter fuel payments, a suggested smoking ban, 4-day week and record numbers of small boats.
And all Rishi Sunak has done, he's tweeted a grand total of 13 times over the course of 2 months. We're joined now by former Tory MP Neil Parish. Neil, just looking at a tweet here from John, who says, Rishi Sunak is hiding out of embarrassment. Calling an election in July was one of the biggest political mistakes ever made by a Prime Minister. I think Neil, he's probably right, isn't he?
I think he is. I'm not sure, in a way, whenever the general election was going to be called, I think we were going to have difficulty. I think he thought he was going to wrong foot reform by having an election in July. I mean, it really backfired. And I think, yes, I think he probably is Rishi Sunak now home licking his wounds. I also think he's quite an honourable man, and he thinks probably people don't want to hear too much from him. He has stayed on as Tory Tory leader, so as the leadership contest can take a little while. So I think all of these things are sort of summing it up. There will be a debate, I think, this week on the winter fuel payments, because I think this is madness from Labour, because what you do with winter fuel payments is you give them to everybody and you tax it away from the wealthiest in society. So the whole thing is a nonsense. So hopefully he'll get his teeth into that. And I think he's really leaving it now to the leadership contenders to talk about the smoking ban, the 4-day week, all of these things, which again are, you know, the 4-day week could be potentially very expensive for some businesses and very difficult to implement. All right, if they're not forced into it. Smoking ban is crazy, I think, because how on earth are the hospitality sector going to police people smoking outside? So, you know, I wish them well. The trouble with laws is you want to make sure you can enforce them before you bring them in. So I think it's now really over to the... And of course, he is a man of means, let's put it bluntly, and so he doesn't need to go on the sort of the circuit like so many have. I won't mention names, and into America and so on.
But so we've got Kemi Badenoch speaking very soon. Who do you think, Neil, would make the best leader for the Conservative Party? Who should move them forward?
I quite like Kemi Badenoch. She calls a spade a shovel, and I think probably in this sort of politically correct world that we're now living in, I think she would be absolutely right. I think another one is Robert Jenrick. I think if you wanted somebody sort of more on the left of the party, Tom Tugendhat. But I think like I said, I think 3 will definitely get through now, and that'll be Kemi Badenoch, and that will be Priti Patel, and probably Tom Tugendhat. But I think the ones, James Cleverly and Mel Stride, I think will be under pressure. It'll be interesting to see now what happens, because naturally the MPs have got to whittle it down, haven't they? 1 a week to 4 go to conference, I think, and then after that they whittle it down to 2. If I was a betting man, I would put the money on Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick being the 2 to go into the ballot to members. But we shall see, shan't we? You'll be able to bring me back and say, you said, and you've got it all wrong. We will see. Yeah.
And do you think, Neil, that they will all positively not want an endorsement from Rishi Sunak because he is so discredited by that disastrous election result?
Oh, God.
Probably. On the other hand, you know, I still think he is a very honourable man. I think he got it wrong, and I think it'll be interesting. I expect some wouldn't mind an endorsement, others probably not. I think it was John Major, wasn't it, when he lost the 97 election?
Well, listen, Neil, we're running out of time, Neil, so we'll have to leave there. Neil Parish, thank you very much. Still to come, Kemi Badenoch's leadership bid in London. Stay tuned.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today, most of us will see some rain, if not also some thunderstorms, but there will be a little bit of brightness around, and for all, it will be feeling fairly warm. So it's a wet start out there, especially across many northern and western parts. Some of this rain will be quite heavy and thundery, given some fairly poor travelling conditions in places. Come the afternoon, there will be some brighter moments, especially across southeast England, East Anglia, and also parts of Northern Ireland. But for most of us, it's going to be a fairly grey picture, but quite warm picture, fairly humid, especially down towards the south. We will see highs easily reaching the mid-20s. Into this evening, most of the rain will be focused across parts of Scotland. Here, again, there will be some heavy and thundery downpours in places, so a fairly tricky commute here. Further south into Northern Ireland, it's like a little bit drier and brighter moving in here too, and certainly a little bit drier across northern England and into Wales. But again, there still will be a few thundery downpours around. Best of the driest weather come the evening rush hour will be across parts of the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast of England. Into the nighttime period, a lot of the cloud and rain gradually working its way eastward. So some clearing skies across Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. So here, a fresher night than last night, but further east, another fairly humid one. Temperatures in London probably not falling much lower than around 15 or 16 degrees. So a bit of a grey, murky start across many eastern areas. Again, still some outbreaks of rain, but the rain will be nowhere near as heavy as it will be today. Brighter skies further west, but that will be quickly replaced by some further showery outbreaks of rain moving in come the afternoon. So I think by the end of the afternoon, the best of the brightness will be across the central slice of the UK. And for all of us, it will be feeling fresher, with highs in the south reaching around 22 or 23 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Monday, the 2nd of September, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Nana Akua.
So, where is Rishi Sunak? Parliament resumes today. So, will we finally hear from the leader of the opposition after a radio silence after losing the general election?
And the Tory leadership campaign, Kemi Badenoch is launching her campaign to be the next Conservative leader. We'll be crossing to her speech very shortly.
Prince Harry, well, he's returning, potentially. The Duke of Sussex is said to be making inquiries about repairing his relationship with his family and the British public.
And do we want a smoke-free nation? Well, the Leader of the Commons, Lucy Pale, says just that. It's the country's ambition. Is she right?
And croissant cholesterol. A groundbreaking study shows that eating pastries every day isn't great for your heart. You know, I started eating croissants and I'm going to have to stop. But will just one do damage? Is there any good news left for us?
But you're so slim.
I had my cholesterol done the other day. I'm 1 point over.
Oh.
And I say it's because I've been eating croissants. And
every day?
I don't normally eat them, but I started a thing with them.
Don't you just know they're full of fat?
Well, croissant, but then you've got, I put salmon in the croissant and butter.
Not good.
Oh,
not
so good, though. That's so
now,
good.
we're going to talk, too, about the pressure today on Keir Starmer to take the whip off of the Labour MP.
Jazz Athwell.
Newly elected Ilford South. Their biggest landlord in Parliament.
15 properties.
When he was leader of Redbridge Council in East London, he brought forward quite an interesting scheme, didn't he?
Yeah, he brought forward the licensing scheme. So if you want to rent out your property, you had to have a licence. But it turns out that 7 of the 15 properties that he had did not have a licence. It was his own scheme. And, of course, his flats were full of mould and with ants. And I saw one of the videos where there was the fire alarm was just hanging from the ceiling.
Squalor.
It was absolute squalor. And I mean, they haven't, as I know, haven't yet remove the whip, but this is by-election territory, surely.
I mean, taking the whip off means they take them up. They effectively just have to sit on the back benches as an independent. And when the Tories were in trouble last year, or this year, Labour would scream and shout, and quite right, and the Tories would take the whip off a number of MPs. But he hasn't had his removed yet, and I think he should have.
Well, it's an absolute shocker. You'd expect that to be the first immediate thing.
Look,
but he has said sorry, though.
Oh, that's all right then. But, you know, the clamour there would be on the Labour benches if a Tory MP was the one who'd got all these disgusting, filthy, revolting properties, which breached his own licensing regulations. It would be same old Tories, Tory scandal, Tory sleaze, but it doesn't. We don't hear nothing from Labour.
Well, actually, we hear nothing from any of them with regard to that. I mean, I would expect to hear lots from the Tory party complaining about this. I'd expect to hear from even the Liberal Democrats, with the Greens. Where are all these people? I know it's recess, but when things are happening...
Well, the House is back today, so we'll see what's going to happen. I'm going to go into the House later on.
Are you?
Because I think there should be a debate on the reason to do with the riots. We can't just allow Keir Starmer to carry on saying it was all about the far right. I think we should have a proper, serious debate. I'm amazed that on the first day back, that's not happening. And the winter fuel allowance being scrapped.
Well, she's doubled down. Rachel Reeves doubled down in it.
There's to be no debate. They say if the Tories are unhappy about it, which they are, they can use an opposition day, so they can use a Friday, or every now and again you get an opposition day debate, and you can choose what it is, and the Speaker will go along with it. So I think if the Tories have an opposition day debate this week, it should be on winter fuel.
Well, also,
or the riots.
Also, Rachel Reeves didn't she didn't take it through all the normal checks and balances if you are introducing something of that nature. No. So it does seem a bit odd that they're just literally railroading, policies that they want to get through during this recess period, I think, just so that then there's literally no opposition. Not that there would be one, because they've got 158 seat, I think it is, a majority.
Yeah, no, it's more than 168.
Is it 160?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's the second largest majority since Blair.
It is shocking. It is shocking. But actually, the other parties are powerless to do anything about it ultimately, because if Labour want to get it through, then they'll get it through. Anne's been in touch on gbnews.com/You'll Say. We were talking about the smoking ban. Obviously outside. Will the government allow people, she says, who visit the UK to smoke outside? They haven't got a garden or house of their own. And I expect hotels already don't permit them to smoke in their rooms. Will it then affect tourism to this country? Just wondering.
Occasionally, you can go to a hotel and they say, do you want a smoking room? But I think they're abroad. I don't think you could have a smoking room in Britain, in a hotel.
No.
That really would be against the law.
No, I don't think we have that sort of thing here. I mean, I'm effectively for banning smoking, full stop, because I can see no health benefit at all. Somebody can tell me what that benefit would be, I'd love to hear it. But if it was introduced now, it would not be allowed.
No.
So, and also, it was when somebody told me I get lips like I won't say I'm not. I think it's too early. But somebody told me that I get lips like a... Well, I won't say.
Move on.
I'll move on. Which is why I stopped smoking. Have you ever smoked?
I stopped when I was 40, but I wasn't 20 a day or anything like that. And in the days when you could go to the pub, I'd have a few fags in the pub, or at lunchtime with a cup of tea, a cup of coffee.
Somebody's Adrian's come in and he said actually he agrees with you when you talked about the riots and there needing to be more serious debate on that. Illegal immigration and winter fuel, they are not being held to account by the useless opposition.
No, they're not. They're not. And these are really, really important issues. And look, I understand that Rishi Sunak's embarrassed, and I guess he thinks it should be up to the leadership contenders to be making the news. But he is the official leader of the opposition. He's paid a salary of £155,000 a year. He keeps his car, official car and driver, for the rest of his life. He's not doing his job.
No. Nick sent a very long message. I'll read bits, Nick. He said, Mr Power, stop talking about Rishi Sunak being honourable. He is nothing of the sort. He stabbed Boris Johnson in the back in a totally treacherous way. He was a sore loser, having lost to Liz Truss. He plotted and schemed with the MPs, the Treasury and the Bank of England to get rid of Liz Truss. I don't know. I don't know whether that's true, but potentially. He plotted with the shameless Graham Brady of the 1922 committee to cheat his way into number 10 when a members' vote would have restored Boris Johnson. He cheated democracy and became an unelected Prime Minister. He is not honourable. That's what he said.
Well, Graham Brady's not here to defend himself, of course.
No.
Lord Brady he's about to become, actually.
Yes.
Graham Brady, he was chairman in the 1922. He was the man who would announce the results of the leadership contest. It was a function he had to perform rather regularly in the last few years. And in fact, he's just got a book coming out called Kingmaker, or is it Kingslayer?
More messages coming in. June says, why are Labour so anti-old people? Suggesting putting older prisoners in nursing homes and taking winter fuel payments off them. If we have a harsh winter, a lot will die from pneumonia or hypothermia. And how safe are the pensioners being with prisoners? You couldn't make this Labour lot up. Never mind, Angela is happy raving the night away.
Well, that was an extraordinary scene. She goes straight from a meeting, I think it was to do with cladding, after the big fire in Dagenham, in the council block in Dagenham. So she chairs a big meeting, doesn't she? And there she is, a smart red dress. Next thing we see that she's at a rave, a really upmarket club in Ibiza.
I know, bottle of water in hand. She's in the DJ booth, I think it is.
Yeah.
But wherever it is, it's a slightly elevated platform when you see her doing it.
Didn't even change the dress.
Same day. I mean, I probably would, but...
it didn't look great. It wasn't a great look for the Deputy Prime Minister, was it?
I feel as though they've not really...
She's allowed to have a break.
She's allowed to have a break, but it's almost as though they don't understand that they are now leading the country. And I think there needs to be a change of behaviour. If you are leading the country, you cannot continue to act like the opposition.
She has to understand now, social media, there are cameras everywhere, everything is filmed. Do you remember Michael Gove was seen dancing away at dancing?
Oh, God, how can you... I can't unsee it.
And the video was so bad, and I wrote a piece in the Mail saying, actually, it's even worse dancing with Michael Gove, because I actually once danced with him at a party to Dancing Queen from ABBA. I didn't know it was possible for anyone to dance so badly to a piece of joyful music.
Yeah.
And I like Michael.
I like Michael.
A very bad dancer.
I can't take that. He's almost
the worst dad dancer.
Almost as bad as Theresa May. Do you remember that awful conference that she had where the
letters...
was
Dancing Queen.
Yeah, but the letters fell off the thing. And, that was bad. She lost her voice.
And she came on trying to dance and she couldn't dance.
Terrible. It was very, very sad. Still more messages coming in. We've got this one from Y. He said, if he called... This is about Rishi Sunak calling an election. He said, if he called an early election to avoid a confidence vote, not so honourable as as was his part in ousting prime ministers. And Adrian says, smoking ban outdoors won't be able to be policed. I was talking to a retired police officer about that.
Well, I think that's the other thing. The police have got enough on their plate without having to...
They keep adding more things that they'll be doing.
A ban. I mean, would it be a criminal matter to smoke in a pub car park or a civil matter? In which case it's a council bylaw or something you break. But, I mean, the idea that a police officer is going to say, oi, excuse me, put that out from taking down the cells. Crazy.
Well, it's crazy, and the police have been given even more to do. I mean, there was the reversal of the Conservative policy of the non-crime hate reporting, which is a non-crime hate, so that is where it's not a crime, but somebody can say, oh, somebody did this to me and it was hateful and blah, 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 without you even potentially knowing about it, and then it's put on your record. I mean, it's absolutely absurd, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, now, just to say, we're getting ready for Kemi Badenoch. She's about to launch her campaign to become the next leader of the Conservative Party. I think, in fact, we can now cross over to her right now. There she is.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Let's talk about our future, the future of our party, our politics, and our country. Most of you were lucky enough to spend your childhoods here. I was not. I was born here, but grew up under socialism. So I know the reason why millions of people from all over the world want to live here. It is because they know they can build a future here. But we can all feel a growing sense that the future is not as bright as it once was. That despite all of our strengths, our history, and our potential, we have lost control. And this is not just because of the mistakes Labour are making, and they are making many mistakes. It's because of the mistakes that we made. Labour are only there because people no longer believed in the Conservatives. We dealt with some of the most profound challenges faced by any government since World War II. The aftermath of COVID, Ukraine. But we ended up mired in scandal, unable to deliver on our promises, and fundamentally distrusted. It's time for something completely different. The British people are yearning. They are yearning for something better, and this Labour government is not it. Labour have no ideas. At best, they are re-announcing things we have already done, and at their worst, they are clueless, irresponsible, and dishonest. They are trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the public about the state of Britain's finances, placing political donors into civil service jobs, pretending that they had no plans to cut pensioner benefits before the election, and then doing exactly that to cover the cost of pay rises for the unions with no promise of reform. But their model of spend, spend, spend is broken, and they don't know what to do. And this will only lead to even more cynicism in politics. They are already making worse mistakes than we did. But if we want to become worthy of the British people's trust again, we can't just sit around pointing out how terrible Labour are. That's just not good enough. And we can't just keep having the same policy arguments from the last Parliament. We are not in power, we lost. Labour will fail. And when that time comes and the British people are looking for change, we have to be that change. We have to focus on renewal, the renewal of our party, our politics, and our thinking. And it starts with principles. Principles are the fundamentals that give us direction, unity, and certainty. They must underpin everything we do. Here are a few of my principles. First, I believe in personal responsibility. My late father once said to me, only 20% of what happens to you is down to others. 80% is down to your actions and your choices. That is why I believe in personal responsibility. That is why I know that the government cannot solve all our problems, and nor should it try to. Government should nurture a fair and safe society in which people can prosper by their own efforts. A government that tries to do everything will likely end up achieving nothing. It will also run out of everybody's money. This was one of our mistakes. We talked right but governed left, sounding like Conservatives but acting like Labour. Government should do fewer things but better, and what it does, it should do with brilliance. Second, I believe in citizenship. Citizenship is not just about having a passport. It is a commitment to a country and the people in it. A country belongs to its citizens. It is nothing without them. We cannot treat their needs or concerns as secondary or inconvenient or of a lower priority than anyone else's. People should not be made to feel guilty for questioning levels of immigration, legal or illegal, if it is changing the place they know and love. And government should not be shy of doing whatever it takes to change things. If people don't want their taxes to pay for foreign criminals to be in our jails or on our streets, those criminals should be removed. If they want local people to have priority for housing, for benefits, for school places, we must make that happen. Our country is not a dormitory for people just here to make money or a hotel for those passing through. It is our home, and no one else will look after it. Third, I believe in equality under the law. If citizenship is to mean something, then our laws must apply equally to all citizens. Anything else breeds division and resentment. In government, I saw just how malign and destructive identity politics had become. Laws brought in to protect everyone were used by left-wingers to protect certain groups over others. We've seen in history what happens when governments do this. That must not happen here. And that is why, when everyone was talking about the 5 new MPs from Reform, I was far, far more worried about the 5 new MPs elected on the back of sectarian Islamist politics, alien ideas that have no place here. It's the sort of politics we need to defeat, and defeat quickly. Fourth, I believe in the family. The foundation of our society is not the individual, it is the family. Whether it's the family we're born into or the family we build, my family is everything to me. It's everything to most of us. And sometimes government just doesn't get family. It wants to help with childcare, not because it loves children, but so that their mums can get back to work quickly. We need to celebrate families. We need to place them at the center of our politics and our actions, for the good of society, not for the good of the Treasury. Fifth, thank you. Fifth, and most importantly, I believe in truth. Truth is not relative. Those who know me best know that I don't do spin. I do charm, sometimes. Sometimes I do charm. But I think life is better when people say what they think. I think politics is better when we tell it like it is. Spin can only get you so far. It is better to deal with hard truths today than big problems tomorrow. And this has been the central failure of politics for 25 years, maybe even longer. For too long, politics has just been about working out what the voters want to hear and then saying it back to them. It is the triumph of words over deeds, and that has to change. It has to change because principles only mean something if you turn them into action. Policy without action is just chat. But our whole system is broken. In government, I had to keep fighting that system, a system that has evolved over recent decades to stop governments doing things they were elected to do. I would see a problem, try to fix it, and be told, sorry, Minister, you can't do that. People would ask me for help. They would ask me to intervene. And when I tried to, I was told, it's not a good look. Ministers should not get involved like that. Well, I like to get involved. It's time to make sure that governments can do what they're elected to do. Because if they cannot, then democracy does not mean anything. We need to reboot, reset, and rewire. Rewire the way that government works so that it can serve the public. Nothing is more important, and that is why we are here at the Institute of Engineering and Technology. Right now, this country desperately needs an engineer. Engineers fix problems. We do tough stuff. Getting my engineering degree was much harder than running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. But it gave me a whole new way of looking at the world. Engineers are realists. We see the world as it truly is, but we can also dream, and we can plot a path from idea to reality. We don't make things better just by using words. There is little room for error in what we do. When I worked in banking, if my code broke, people would lose their money. If engineers build a plane badly, it crashes. A bridge built to the wrong spec comes tumbling down. So we know how to build systems that work. It is because we understand trade-offs. We don't try to do everything. We understand how to manage limitations and expectations. Every engineer has had to explain the magic triangle of quality, cost, and time. Things can be good. They can be fast, they can be cheap, but they can't be all three. Many politicians simply do not understand that. That's why they run into trouble. Too often, politicians pretend that we can have everything. So they make promises they cannot keep. They say you can spend more on everything and still have lower taxes. They say that there are huge efficiencies to be had in government without identifying them. They propose huge changes without making plans. Engineers accept reality. Engineers are honest. Engineers get stuff done. I am an engineer. I want to help us rebuild the party, rewire the state, reboot the economy, revive our country and make it go places. And we need to do this because the challenges of the next decade are going to be even bigger than what has come before. This is why my campaign is called Renewal 2030 and not Kemi for Leader. The problems of the future cannot be solved by one person. The Reform Party cannot solve them. Liberal Democrats cannot solve them. The Labour Party will not solve them. So we need to renew the Conservative Party so that it can solve the problems that will plague the next decade. How do we deal with global mass migration? What jobs will be left when artificial intelligence is doing all the fun stuff? How do we know what is real when so much is not? How does an NHS designed for a young working population adapt to a complex aging population? When Taiwan is under threat from China, when Israel is under threat from Iran, when Ukraine is at war with Russia, we need to ask ourselves if we are ready for this dangerous new world. We cannot rely on laws from the 1950s or assumptions of the 1980s. We need to renew our thinking. The renewal of our party, our politics, is vital if we are to renew our country and its position in the world. I don't pretend I have all the answers, but I'm an engineer. I know how to find them. So let's use this time in opposition wisely. When I was young, I mean, I still am, but when I was younger, the future was exciting. I hate the fact that young people no longer find it so. For the future to mean anything, it must mean something to the young. The Conservatives used to have a vision and an offer for the young. We use the words growth and opportunity and enterprise, but what do we really mean? It's the chance to build something, a career, a business, a family, to acquire capital, and through it, security, savings, a house, pensions, and investments, so that even if today is tough, tomorrow is bright. We have always believed that government should help you in that endeavor, not get in your way, that it should be fair and honest and even-handed, that it should share and strengthen the values and the spirit of the nation, that the dynamism that such enterprise unleashes will enrich us all. We need to be confident Conservatives again. We need to be confident Conservatives again because our party has principles, the very best principles. They are the principles of the British people, the principles not of the centre ground, but of the common ground. They are the source of our country's strength, its heritage, and its future. With the right engineering, there is no limit to what we can do. So it is time. It is time to begin this work. It is time to give new hope. It is time to renew. Thank you.
That was, of course, Kemi Badenoch talking there. That was her leadership challenge.
And I like the fact she kept it pretty short, because you don't want a great, long, waffly speech. I thought it was interesting. We've got the panel with us, Matthew Larser and Emma Wolf. She began by saying that she was born in Britain. Is she sensitive to the fact, Matthew, that She's spent a lot of time in Nigeria. Her parents are Nigerian. She's sensitive about her Nigerian heritage.
It seems to be it's a bit of a change of tone because I understand that in her maiden speech she said, although I was born in the UK,
speech in the Commons,
maiden speech in the Commons, your first speech you make as an MP. So she said that although she was born in the UK, because she spent a lot of her childhood in Nigeria, she regarded herself as effectively a first-generation immigrant, and that was a migrant, and that was the kind of line she was taking about what a successful story of migration her family was. So it's a different change of tone. The Tory membership is very traditional, if I can put it like that. So I think that she clearly thinks that maybe that's an issue she wants to address.
Are you suggesting because they're traditional that they're less likely to want to vote for
I'm not
a woman of colour? They voted.
They didn't vote. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying get to a vote. I actually don't think that, but I'm saying that if you were being a strategist on this, that much suspicion might come in. I think as a Labour man, when my party hasn't managed to elect a woman of any ethnicity to be its leader,
in 120 years, that's a great record, isn't it?
I mean, it's appalling that we haven't had a female leader.
I think it's important just to set out her stall and to make it clear that she was born in this country. I am Team Kemi, and I'm really impressed with her. I thought that speech was great. I think she looks relaxed. She's obviously had some coaching in, you know, I mean, she's a good speaker anyway.
Yeah.
I know she's probably a little bit too incendiary to go all the way. But in terms of the other five, how uninspiring they've been, I think everything she was saying is going to resonate with people. She's talking common sense. She's saying, look, Labour are leading us down an even worse path, but we messed up. She's not ignoring the 14 years of Conservatives not doing a great job.
Yeah, I mean,
she's acknowledging their mistakes. She's talking about the future, fixing things, getting on with things. There's so much is broken.
It was interesting how she acknowledged that.
She's an engineer, all of that.
That we make worse. The Labour's making worse choices than we did, which is very interesting. It's clever, but it's quite risky because obviously it's quite critical of
But she also said that Labour have no idea. She called them clueless, irresponsible, and dishonest.
No, I wouldn't agree with that.
She didn't mince her words.
I mean, no, she didn't. I mean, look, the big question for all of the Tory leadership candidates, when they do things like criticise the means testing of the winter fuel allowance, is what would you do differently? What would you cut? What taxes would you put up to pay for it? Because even if you think the black hole was only the size that it was, well, I mean, if you think that, you have to say that.
Let's start.
Well, I mean, that's a question you should put to all of the leadership
12 billion,
candidates.
and I'd say considerably less.
Well, that is a point of view, but they're not making that argument yet, Andrew. They've got to answer in specifics.
Survived 7 Conservative chancellors. It was introduced by Gordon Brown in November 1997, and she, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, had a poster of Gordon Brown on her bedroom wall at Oxford. He is her political hero.
went to her 19th birthday party, but I wasn't in her bedroom. I just want to point that out.
No,
I can't testify to the
it's
post.
a scandalous thing to cut, and, you know, look, everybody knows that it's not low-hanging fruit. It was a stupid decision, a vindictive decision, unpleasant decision, and when you're paying nearly 12 billion out in international aid, look, there is a place for international aid, foreign aid, of course there is, but you don't. Charity begins at home. Caring for our elderly begins at home.
£8 billion.
That's where you go first.
£8 billion in an energy company which will produce no energy.
Ed Miliband,
it will decarbonise the grid.
Well, Ed Miliband, with his, he's got a solar farm, with a wind farm that they've been paying 2.5 million to not produce any energy. I mean, it's just absurd, and that's in his first month. So
and let's not even mention the train drivers.
I wouldn't have given the train drivers 15% for them to announce a strike 2 days later.
Well, that strike is now off. I think heads were banged together on that one.
Yes.
So there's all strikes on the railways are off, but you know it was at a price.
For doctors.
It was at a price.
Well, let's get back to Kemi Badenoch now, because we're about to have our question being heard.
Catherine Forster, GB News. Thank you. You've said that not growing up in Britain, you realise how very lucky we are to live here, and that millions of people would like to live here. So we've had Robert Jenrick saying a cap of tens of thousands. We've had Tom Tugendhat saying a cap of 100,000. Can you give us some specifics in numbers and how you plan to deal with legal and illegal migration? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm really glad you asked the migration question, because what you have said shows and illustrates quite well where things went wrong. We had a cap of tens of thousands when David Cameron came in. We need to ask ourselves, why didn't that work? Rather than just saying, we'll make another promise. Something went wrong there. So it's not just about throwing out numbers and throwing out targets. Something is wrong with the system. So I'm talking about the system. People who are throwing out numbers and saying, oh, well, we'll leave the ECHR and so on, are giving you easy answers. That is how we got in this mess in the first place. I'm not going to do that. Catherine, I don't want it to sound like I haven't thought about what to do. I have been thinking about it. And I think that the first thing starts with who we get to enforce our borders. Many of the people that we ask to enforce our borders are actually more interested in doing other things. They feel squeamish about it. They're not bad people, but it's not what they came in to do. You look at many of the officials that I met from the Home Office, for example, they'd come from refugee charities. They wanted to look after refugees and asylum seekers. We need to take a better look at how we recruit into the civil service and make sure that people are put in places and in jobs where their skills are going to be best used. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Change from the ground up, rewiring the whole system. Yes, some people think that we should leave the ECHR, but why is it that other countries that are in the ECHR are deporting 70–80% of the people who come into their countries and we're not able to? Because clearly leaving the ECHR will not be enough. That's why I don't want to throw that promise out there. It's another thing that we would end up doing that doesn't actually solve the problem. We've got to look at the whole system. Thank you.
That was
Harry Cole.
Answering the question from GBNews. Catherine Foster asked about what she's going to do with regard to immigration. I don't feel like I was satisfied with that answer at all.
But she's saying by just leaving the European Convention on Human Rights isn't enough on its own if we're going to really cut immigration.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that she's not giving that the red meat to the Tory members of leaving the ECHR. I mean, the overwhelming, I think, majority of Tory members would want to leave the ECHR. So, you know, that's brave. But I mean, the problem with all of this, she said, oh, other countries who are in the ECHR send back 80%, reject 80% of people and actually send people back to their country of origin. But of course, the Tories had 14 years to do that. So that's the point that's going to be made every time.
She also
the Tories had 14 years to cut the international aid budget more. They didn't do it. That's the problem when you're running for the leadership of a party that's just been hammered at an election.
Well, she also talked about recruitment with regard to the civil service and that the wrong people are in the jobs regarding border force.
Not going to be very popular in Whitehall, but I think she's making a good point there. When you have people who are there to promote the interests of refugees and asylum seekers, then yes, it is going to be difficult to get any kind of robust policies through. And she also makes the point that leaving the ECHR isn't going to solve the problem. I think if she'd probably had more time, she would have kind of talked about the fact that people are travelling through Europe, that our borders don't mean borders. Well, this is me. I mean, borders don't mean borders anymore, do they? People are travelling through and coming to this country. You see the farce of the French guiding them halfway through our waters and then the British picking them up and guiding them safely to our shores. Well,
we use the RNLI, many people's favourite charity.
Yes. No wonder people are crossing in small boats.
We need a proper deal with the French.
Delighted about the fact that they hear that Rwanda is off the cards, and that
which is why Keir has started out.
How much more money
out.
are we going to give the French?
Well, I hope not. I hope it's not about giving them more money.
For doing nothing, Andrew.
But about having a proper deal and and making that we get value for the money that we give, which the Tories didn't do.
Nobody wants to head up his border command control, though. He can't get anyone to do it.
Well, it's a pretty. I mean, it's an unthankless. It's
because it's a non-job because there's a body there already. It was just a sound gimmick for the election.
Get someone like Peter Bleksley or someone who wants to do it. Come on.
I'd make Peter Bleksley Prime Minister.
At the moment, we're filling the NHS with managers and more managers. We can't recruit doctors, and we're filling the NHS with more layers.
I don't think we're filling the NHS.
Give someone a lot of money to be the head of border control and do the job properly.
But what we're doing is getting the doctors back to work by settling the doctors' strike, so people's operations aren't cancelled.
Why don't the French just puncture the dinghies when they're on the beach? Puncture them.
I think that they are doing something.
They don't just arrive. They don't just appear on the beach.
But they are doing something like that, to be fair to them. But she talked about rewiring the whole system.
Yeah.
Oh, how long is that going to take, though? We need some immediate...
They've got 5 years to do it.
We actually need immediate action.
No, I know, it could be 10.
They're big. I mean, and of course, I'm not sure that she addressed the elephant in the room, which is reform. I actually think we might see reform come first in an opinion poll in the next couple of months, because we're going to have this kind of split, 30-30, 20, 15. Between
and
the four
also
big parties.
Labour's utter abject failure to do anything about illegal migration.
Labour certainly needs to make sure, and Keir in his conference speech in 3 weeks' time needs to make sure that he addresses legitimate public concerns about migration, whilst being clear that we welcome asylum seekers who've got a genuine case and are fleeing persecution.
I think Labour are in big trouble. There's a stat from this morning from the business section. Institute of Directors Economic Confidence Index has gone from +7 in July to -12. People are terribly worried about this tax raid, about strengthening workers' rights, about strengthening the unions, all of that. I think not only is the honeymoon period well and truly gone, But I think Labour are in a bad place already.
It is extraordinary that the difference between the rhetoric and the narrative, Matthew, between now and the last Labour landslide in 97 and 2001. Blair was optimistic, he was telegenic, there was a sense, there was a buzz behind him.
And Starmer is telling us our country is rotten.
He's talking it down.
Well, he is, and they did that in 2010. The Conservatives did that, and that didn't work out well.
Yeah, he's talking it down.
I think it's a danger. I mean, a friend of mine wrote a brilliant piece of The Spectator last week saying that where's the joy?
Yeah. I read that piece. Yeah. Remind me who wrote it.
Steve Fielding is an academic and a friend of mine. And it absolutely is important that you have the optimism. I mean, Ronald Reagan just kept smiling wherever bad things went.
Make it. At least pretend, at least pretend to believe in our country.
Well, at least start with some optimism, but thank you very much to our panel, Emma Wolf and also Matthew Larza. Well, stay tuned, because up next, is Britain going to become a smoke-free nation? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update here on GB News from the Met Office. Big thunderstorms likely in places this afternoon, by no means everywhere catching a downpour, but where they are forming, dropping a lot of rain in a short space of time. It's a bit of a messy picture with low pressure sitting across the country, but also a whole tangle of weather fronts all drifting up from the south. That's why it's still quite warm and humid. We are seeing some big downpours developing this afternoon, particularly over parts of mid and East Wales into the West Midlands, and especially northeast Scotland. Much of eastern England staying dry. It may well brighten up here, and still quite a warm and humid feel, 24, maybe 25 in one or two places. It's cooler where we've got the clouds and the outbreaks of rain, particularly persistent over western Scotland. But it's really in the northeast of Scotland where we're looking at some pretty nasty thunderstorms breaking out and spreading slowly northwards. A lot of spray, surface water on the roads here, the potential for some flooding as well. The rain maybe not as heavy further west, but it is still a pretty damp day across western Scotland and the east of Northern Ireland. Then another zone where we could catch some big thunderstorms, parts of Wales and the West Midlands especially. So again, that could cause some disruption. The thunderstorm warning remains in place until midnight. We'll see them drifting further north, perhaps into parts of northern England during the evening time as well. But generally, it does turn a bit drier as we go through the night, certainly in western Scotland and the east of Northern Ireland. Some showers perhaps coming into the southeast. Still pretty warm, pretty humid across these eastern areas, but further west starting to turn a little fresher overnight, some places down into single figures. And for many, there'll be a cooler, fresher feel on Tuesday. Still a lot of cloud over the Midlands, and there will still be some heavy showers potentially, most likely over East Anglia and the southeast, but generally a sunnier day for northern England, Wales and southwest England. A few showers coming into the northwest, and as I said, starting to turn a little bit fresher and cooler by the afternoon.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:40. It's Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and the lovely Nana Aquia.
Well, it's been 2 months since the general election, but where is Rishi Sunak?
We've seen these huge issues, frankly, causing the government a lot of issues. There's a row over civil service cronyism, a suggested smoking ban in a pub garden, and the ban and also taking away the winter fuel allowance.
So yesterday on GB News, Leader of the Commons, Lucy Powell, made her views on the future of Britain very clear.
What we've got here is a consensus, really, that's built over recent times that we want to aspire to get to a position where we've got a smoke-free nation.
I don't know. Look, I don't want people to smoke, and I used to smoke, and I gave up a long time ago, 25, 24 years ago, whatever it was. But the pub industry I just think the pub now is a really important part of British cultural life.
Particularly
in Wales.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, I don't...
And I think it will be the death knell for the boozer.
Look, I don't think... I would ban smoking outright, you know that, but... Yeah. I would say that why fix a problem that no one is asking to be fixed?
Yeah.
So this is just like
consensus. Who's talking about it?
Who cared? I mean, most of these smoking areas are in a busy, like the outside of pub is usually near a busy street where the odourless gas of carbon monoxide is wafting your way. Do you know what I mean? So
I was on a terrace, restaurant on a terrace the other day, and there were some people puffing away over there, and I looked over. But what was causing the real problem were the 3 cars that were stuck in a traffic jam by the traffic. I mean, who cares about their puff fag? It wasn't going to bother me.
Well, exactly. So is this a nanny state? Is it encroaching us? Joining us, political commentator Theo Asherwood. Theo, great to talk to you. Theo, what is this? What's the big deal? Why are Labour talking about a smoking ban at this time when we've got so many other pressing issues?
Right.
It does raise a question. Yeah, it's a very good question. Look, there's not a straightforward answer, but I think that what's happened potentially is that the civil servants in the Department for Health have somehow had this in their inboxes for a while, and that they have suddenly thought, what can we get through? We've got a new regime in place. What can we get through now? And you raised the point, and I think this is a very good point, actually, that actually this wasn't something that anybody was asking for in particular. We knew about the legislation the Conservatives were going to introduce. They just ran out of parliamentary time, which was, of course, a phased ban on smoking, so that anybody born in 2009 or after would never be able to buy cigarettes. But this has been taken to the next step. And I think there's a slight concern that Labour's become a bit of a middle-class endeavour, that actually that people want to just be able to, working people, they do hard jobs, they go to the pub and they want to be able to go out into the pub garden and have a cigarette after work, and they don't want to have a sort of people, whether it be the council officials or pub landlords or whoever it may be, telling them that they can't have a cigarette. And I think there's a slight concern potentially that nobody within the upper echelons of government really gets that really understands that. Do you remember Dr. John Reid, who was a former Defence Secretary, and when Tony Blair introduced the smoking ban indoors, actually came out and said, hold on a moment, working class people, and he was from, Dr. John Reid was now in the Lords, from a working class background, actually said, hold on a moment, we need to be really careful about this, because actually we need to understand that smoking for some people is just part of their lives, and it's something that they do. I'm not saying that it's just working class people who smoke for one moment, but I think there's a potentially a lack of understanding that actually people, they don't necessarily, they do hard jobs, they have hard lives, and actually just to be on their side for a moment, rather than starting to sort of over encroachment into those lives, just to back off a little bit. Because Keir Starmer, it was a theme throughout the election, wasn't it, that actually politics was going to tread a little bit more lightly on their lives. And I think people were looking at this going, hang on a moment, this doesn't quite sit with that.
Yeah, and this is also a gift, isn't it, which we've already seen Nigel Farage on manoeuvres on this, Theo. He likes a fag, he likes the pub. He said this would stop him going to the pub. We've seen the pub trade fighting back. And we have to remember, Reform were second in 100 Labour Party-held seats. This is the sort of issue that could become quite an important issue on the ballot box, because, look, I speak as one who used to smoke. I just don't think the government should be even contemplating this. There's more important things to do.
It has many more important things to do. And also, this is a government that says economic growth is its #1 priority. Now, the pub industry works on very, very fine margins. If you have a pub and you're running a pub and you see even the slightest downturn in your customer base or an uptick in your overhead costs, then you can get into financial trouble very, very quickly. And we saw that actually during the energy crisis, when we saw spiralling energy prices. We were seeing hundreds of pubs close, as a result of the fact that their cost base, their energy costs, had shot through the roof. And unlike other businesses which work on much higher margins, they were unable to deal with that. They were unable to cope with those significant rising costs because they don't make huge amounts of revenue and profit. And I think if we end up in a situation where actually people decide that because they can't have a cigarette with their alcoholic drink in the evening, they decide to stay at home, whether it be at home in their house or in their garden or whatever, but they decide not to go to the pub. And that can have a really significant knock-on effect on the pub industry at a time when the government has said, and it should be doing this, by the way, it's right to be saying this, that it wants to support businesses. And I think there's a slight concern that actually within the government there isn't a huge amount of business experience.
Well, I hear you there. I mean, it feels like Labour are scaring off bigger because, and I would have asked you about that, but we've got to move on. Theo Ushwood, thank you very much. He's a political commentator.
You were going to mention that Institute of Directors survey showing business confidence has hemorrhaged since the election. It's all the doom and gloom language from the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Prime Minister. Talk positive. Talk the country down, for God's sake.
Things will only get worse. It's the very opposite to his song. Things will only get better. Lots more still to come. Do not go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty, and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean, up to 90% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And in the last year, there's been 2 tax increases that have equated more to the last 3 years combined. So now, if you're a roll-your-own smoker, a 30-gram pouch of roll-your-own will cost £22.50, but you can buy a counterfeit pack of 50 grams for £3. So there's a massive disparity. A lot of illegal tobacco is imported, but we do also have a problem in the UK with illegal tobacco factories. So in the last month, there's been an illegal tobacco factory in Gateshead, in Bury, busted, producing roll-your-own tobacco. And on the 12th of July this month, West Midlands gang illegal tobacco factory, the gang was found guilty of producing illegal tobacco, and that was more than £5 million lost tax revenue to the government. And actually, all of those people found guilty got a suspended sentence.
And how does that work? They're literally importing container loads of raw tobacco and packaging it up in factories in Britain. They're using what appears to be British packaging illegally?
Yeah, some of it is branded packaging, so some of it isn't the kind of unbranded packaging we'd see on cigarettes and roll-your-own now, but it's relatively simple to reproduce, especially RYO. Our own pack swap data now shows that about 50% of the roll-your-own market is illegal tobacco.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Up at noon, the dream team, Patrick and Emily, literally the dream team.
Yes, the dream team, that's us. 12 till 3 this afternoon. We've got a lot on our plate. Of course, the Tory leadership is heating up finally.
Everybody's so thrilled by that, aren't they?
Delighted. We're trying to make it exciting.
All over the country.
We'll make it exciting, though.
Nothing else.
But Kevin Badenoch, she swerved that question on immigration, didn't she?
She didn't answer it.
Massively swerved it. Said, we'll get some better people in the Home Office. OK, all right then. But what do you want the numbers to look like? That is key. That is key.
It is.
So she needs to say something on that, we think. But, of course, we've got James Cleverly up next on our programme, so we'll listen into a little bit of that and see what he has to say.
Yes, is there anything Labour don't want to ban as well? They're talking about banning takeaways near schools.
Yeah.
Presumably it'll be
the corner shop next, so you can't bother getting sweets out there. It'll be all sorts of stuff. So we're going to have a discussion about
the
that.
vapes as well.
Vapes, yeah, clearly. Vapes are like the electric cars of the cigarette world, aren't they? OK, everyone stop smoking cigarettes, go and get a vape. We're going to ban the vapes, you know. It's kind of what
ban the vapes, ban the smoking, ban the takeaways, everything.
Absolutely. Winter fuel payments, they're swerving a vote in Parliament on the cancellation of winter fuel payments. Are they running scared?
Yes.
Does look like it. Well, the Tories say they're hiding from scrutiny.
Yeah.
I think they'll just block a vote. They're not going to have a vote. They don't want the discussion out there. Also, we're going to be looking at what's happening in Germany, the rise of the AfD over there, the right-wing anti-immigration party, what's going on. Keir Starmer, only a few days ago, said all the progressives need to come together and fight the far right. So has he failed on that already?
His great mate is going to be out of a job next year.
But he wants greater integration with Europe, though. If they're going to the right, what will he do?
Well, indeed. Indeed, exactly. It turns out even the continental Europeans aren't listening to him. But and Prince Harry wants to be welcomed back into the royal fold as well, supposedly.
Harumph, harumph from
So good luck to him.
Harumph. I like that. I like that. Harumphing. Also, I don't think the government should be getting involved in Oasis tickets and all of this. You know,
of course not.
If someone wants...
stupid Labour MP said to nationalise the ticket agents.
Why? They don't know what they're doing, do they? Come on, they're coming across really inexperienced.
It's called the market, isn't it?
They want to
just control everything.
No.
You can't just look at something and go, right, that should be under our control.
I think that's going to be a theme of the show today. Control, control, control. Also with very small things, you know? Think of the bigger picture. There are bigger problems out there than someone having a disposable vape, in my opinion.
I didn't. You want an Oasis? They were rubbish the first time.
He tried.
Did you really? Why?
I really wanted one.
They're only doing it for the money. They've literally blatantly said that. They've said they're doing it for the money. They don't care.
Of course they are, but I don't really mind about that.
Did you get through and then the website crashed?
No, I couldn't even get through. I had two different websites running simultaneously. Refresh, nothing. I mean, there was not even a chance of me getting one.
Well, if anyone at home has a ticket and they don't fancy going, you can probably sell it to him for God knows how much.
Yeah,
it's called dynamic
pricing.
I would be willing to pay silly money for an Oasis.
But surely, you know, a ticket like an Oasis ticket is worth as much as someone will pay for it. Surely. You know? If you're silly enough to pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds for a ticket, well, so be it.
Go outside Wimbledon, go outside football matches. They're all there, the towers. It's just a form of tax.
I'll do the responsible thing and I will rinse our joint account for me to have an Oasis ticket. So,
great. You're going on your own?
Well, you're not a fan, are you?
I'd come along.
OK, well,
for the experience.
We've got two tickets then.
That's called modern marriage.
Well, I failed as well. I wanted a Ricky Gervais ticket, Andrew, and I missed out on that as well. They were all gone in the blink of an eye.
Ricky Gervais, that's another thing. He's very good.
He's very good.
Would love to see that. But Oasis, come on, they were rubbish.
I think our call-out just quickly is going to be, do you think Labour should have a vote on the winter fuel payments?
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, got a lot else going on today, but is that the thing? Are they hiding from scrutiny on that? Are they afraid of a rebellion? Are they afraid of hearing from real people in the street? You know, is that what it is?
The Tories should have tabled or tried to put down an emergency question on it, because it wasn't in the manifesto. It's a huge issue. It's going to affect 10 million people a lot. But they haven't.
Maybe they will.
Maybe they will.
Squeeze it in last minute.
They're scaring off big business and they're scaring off investment and growth in this country, and everybody's leaving.
Yeah.
And my chair's
That's
sinking.
like us.
We're not leaving. We'll be here to the bitter end.
Can you notice my chair is sinking again?
Just when you thought you couldn't sink any lower, eh?
You're feeling the line.
Listen, that's it from us here on Britain's Newsroom.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update here on GB News from the Met Office. Big thunderstorms likely in places this afternoon. By no means everywhere catching a downpour, but where they are forming, dropping a lot of rain in a short space of time. It's a bit of a messy picture with low pressure sitting across the country, but also a whole tangle of weather fronts all drifting up from the south. That's why it's still quite warm and humid. We are seeing some big downpours developing this afternoon, particularly over parts of mid and East Wales into the West Midlands, and especially northeast Scotland. Much of eastern England staying dry. It may well brighten up here, and still quite a warm and humid feel, 24, maybe 25 in one or two places. It's cooler where we've got the clouds and the outbreaks of rain, particularly persistent over western Scotland. But it's really in the northeast of Scotland where we're looking at some pretty nasty thunderstorms breaking out and spreading slowly northwards. A lot of spray surface water on the roads here, the potential for some flooding as well. The rain maybe not as heavy further west, but it is still a pretty damp damp day across western Scotland and the east of Northern Ireland. Then another zone where we could catch some big thunderstorms, parts of Wales and the West Midlands especially. So again, that could cause some disruption. The thunderstorm warning remains in place until midnight. We'll see them drifting further north, perhaps into parts of northern England during the evening time as well. But generally, it does turn a bit drier as we go through the night, certainly in western Scotland and the east of Northern Ireland. Some showers perhaps coming into the southeast. Still pretty warm, pretty humid across these eastern areas, but further west starting to turn a little fresher overnight, some places down into single figures. And for many, there'll be a cooler, fresher feel on Tuesday. Still a lot of cloud over the Midlands, and there will still be some heavy showers potentially, most likely over East Anglia and the southeast, but generally a sunnier day for northern England, Wales and southwest England. A few showers coming into the northwest, and as I said, starting to turn a little bit fresher and cooler by the afternoon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
How would you like it? Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all